The biggest music streaming platform in the world is starting to crack. Spotify, the company that transformed how billions of people listen to music that once seemed untouchable, is facing turbulence the size of the empire it built. For years, it was the disruptor, the giant that made CDs and downloads feel obsolete almost overnight. Its green logo became a symbol of musical freedom, a place where artists and listeners met in a new digital frontier. Millions of users, endless playlists, algorithmic recommendations that somehow knew what you wanted before you did. Spotify was the future. And for a moment, the future was perfect. But no empire, no matter how innovative, is immune to cracks. The very business model that helped Spotify scale so rapidly is now showing its limits. The freemium system, free users subsidized by premium subscribers, allowed the platform to grow at a pace traditional record labels could never imagine. It built network effects, it created dependence, it reshaped industry norms. Yet the freemium model came at a cost. Margins were thin, revenue per user was constrained. For every viral hit, every addictive playlist, Spotify was paying out fractions to artists and labels while trying to convince investors that growth alone justified sky-high valuations. That tension was invisible to listeners, but it was always there, ticking beneath the surface. Then came the podcasts. What began as an opportunity to diversify revenue and create exclusive content quickly became a gamble of staggering proportions. The Joe Rogan deal, one of the most hyped moves in media history, cost hundreds of millions upfront. Spotify marketed it as a masterstroke, a way to dominate audio content beyond music, but the backlash was immediate. Controversial episodes, public debates over censorship and responsibility, and the constant pressure of hosting content that could alienate advertisers. Suddenly, Spotify wasn't just a music app, it was a media company caught in the crossfire of public scrutiny, trying to navigate a world of polarized attention while still growing subscribers. At the same time, the platform began to tighten its belts. Layoffs hit, middle management shuffled, ambitious projects were cut, and the culture that once fueled innovation started to feel like a treadmill. Engineers, curators, marketers, all were asked to do more with less, while the public only saw the polished front of curated playlists and charts. Spotify was growing, but the human machinery that made that growth possible was quietly strained. And for users, the experience was subtly changing too. Features that once felt revolutionary, like Discover Weekly, began repeating songs, curating playlists that felt less inspired, more mechanical. The platform that once felt like a personal friend now seemed like a manager, an algorithmic gatekeeper controlling taste rather than reflecting it. Meanwhile, the royalty debate, long simmering, became impossible to ignore. Artists complained, fans noticed, headlines amplified. Percentages paid per stream seemed infinitesimal. Megastars like Taylor Swift or Drake could earn millions, but the vast majority of musicians received only fractions for hours of plays. Viral sensations felt like golden tickets, but many talented artists couldn't survive solely on Spotify streams. Competitors seized on the criticism. Apple Music and Tidal flaunted higher payout percentages, while smaller platforms offered niche revenue models. The tension between Spotify's image as the champion of artists and the reality of its payouts became a PR headache the company couldn't easily escape. Algorithm fatigue set in alongside this. Listeners began noticing patterns. Playlists that once introduced fresh music became repetitive. Curated recommendations started doubling down on trends rather than discovery. Some users switched apps, searching for platforms that felt more personal, more innovative. And yet, the algorithms kept improving in precision, analyzing everything from skip rates to listener behavior, creating engagement loops so refined it was almost invisible. Spotify's magic was still there, but it now came with a psychological weight, a sense that you weren't just listening, you were being measured. Apple Music, YouTube Music, Amazon Music all strengthened their platforms, offered exclusive content, integrated seamlessly with devices, and learned from Spotify's mistakes. Casual listeners didn't have to think twice. Why stay with a service that felt overexposed, complicated, occasionally dismissive of artist concerns, when there were alternatives that offered similar access, sometimes even smoother experiences? Spotify's reputation for innovation, once its strongest weapon, started to waver under the shadow of competitors backed by vast ecosystems. Metrics once overlooked in favor of explosive growth became points of concern. Revenue growth, margin pressure, cash burn. Each quarterly report was scrutinized with more intensity than ever before. Every headline about layoffs, every controversy over artist payments, every podcast scandal translated directly into pressure on the company's valuation. Spotify wasn't just a platform anymore. It was a publicly traded company feeling the relentless weight of global financial scrutiny. Spotify is not failing because people stopped listening. It is still the home to hundreds of millions of monthly active users, billions of streams, and countless artists who rely on its reach. What's faltering is the machinery that turns cultural influence into financial stability. Distribution networks, licensing agreements, advertiser confidence, investor trust. All these pillars are under strain, but none are broken beyond repair. Strategic resets, smarter partnerships, better artist relations, and algorithmic recalibration could restore its trajectory. The question isn't whether Spotify can survive, it's whether it can reinvent itself while maintaining dominance without the cracks that are now visible. Spotify's journey is a lesson about scale, risk, and innovation. Building a platform that changes human behavior is revolutionary, but growth at any cost leaves vulnerabilities. Freemium success depends on paying attention to the margins. Exclusive deals depend on managing public perception. Algorithms delight until they stagnate. Corporations must balance culture, creators, users, and investors simultaneously, a task easier said than done. And the story isn't just about money, it's about culture. Spotify changed how we consume music, how we discover artists, how entire genres gained mainstream attention. The platform made niche sounds global, broke down barriers between fans and artists, and allowed underground movements to flourish. But with that cultural power comes responsibility. When the machinery falters, whether through payout disputes, algorithmic fatigue, or competition, it ripples across music itself. Independent artists struggle, trends shift faster than ever, and listeners sometimes feel trapped in echo chambers curated by code rather than human taste. In the end, Spotify's future depends on balance. Can it maintain innovation while repairing relationships with artists? Can it keep delighting users while navigating scrutiny from regulators, advertisers, and investors? Can it sustain cultural relevance while ensuring financial health? The answer will determine not just the platform's fate, but the shape of music consumption for the next decade. Spotify's story is still being written. The streams continue, playlists still play, but the cracks are visible, the pressure is mounting, and the cultural and financial stakes have never been higher. Whether Spotify reinvents itself or continues to stumble, one thing is clear. The company that once redefined music for a generation will remain a defining story for anyone trying to understand the intersection of technology, culture, and creativity.